This is day 47. I'm recording this because I'm the only one left, and I need you to know why. It wasn't the dead that got them. It was the 5-minute crafts version of survival they found online, and it was a death sentence. This is day 47. I'm recording this because I'm the only one left, and I need you to know why. It wasn't the dead that got them. It was the 5-minute crafts version of survival they found online, and it was a death sentence. Before the world ended, before the screaming started and the cities burned, we had this thing, this digital illusion of competence. Everyone was an expert. Every 15-second video promised you a shortcut to mastery. We were drowning in content, in life hacks and pro tips. They showed you how to turn a plastic bottle into a water filter, a credit card into a lockpick, a candy bar into a 3-course meal. It looked so easy, so clever. It made you feel powerful, prepared. It was a lie, a beautiful, tantalizing, and utterly fatal lie. I'm sitting here in what's left of the old radio station on Highway 82. The generator humming its last few hours away on fumes. I've barricaded the doors, but it's the silence that's truly deafening. It's a silence filled with ghosts. The ghost of Marcus, who believed a tinfoil-lined hat would protect him from, well, it doesn't matter now. The ghost of Sarah, who was so sure her TikTok-famous unbreakable knot would hold her weight. The ghosts of all of them. They weren't stupid people. They were doctors, engineers, teachers. But they were infected with something far more insidious than the rage virus that took the world. They were infected with the psychology of survival misinformation. They believed in the easy way out. They trusted the smiling faces on their screens who promised them survival without sacrifice, safety without skill. This isn't a story of heroism. This isn't a tale of humanity's brave last stand. This is an autopsy of hope, of a generation that traded wisdom for convenience and paid for it in blood. If you find this, if there's anyone left to find this, listen to my voice. Listen to the stories of the dead. I'm going to de-influence the apocalypse for you. I'm going to show you the hidden dangers of online survival advice, the real talk on easy survival myths that no one else survived to tell. I watched viral hacks get everyone killed. And this is their diary. This is my diary. Let's start with day 3 and the lie that killed my daughter's best friend. The unlimited water lie. I remember the video so clearly. A cheerful guy with a perfect beard, standing in a pristine forest. He held up a plastic soda bottle filled with muddy water. "Don't have a filter? No problem," he chirped. He then proceeded to show how, with a t-shirt, some gravel, and charcoal from a fire, you could create a natural water filter. The water poured out the other end, crystal clear. The comment section was full of praise. Genius! Saved for the apocalypse! It had 10 million views. 10 million people given a recipe for dysentery. Chloe was 19, a bright kid, Sarah's best friend, always glued to her phone. When we bugged out from the city, she was the group's self-proclaimed survival expert. She had a whole library of videos saved. She was so confident, so sure. We were camped by a stagnant creek on day 3. Our bottled water was running low and arguments were starting. The creek water was brown, murky. I'd spent years doing backcountry hiking. I knew that water was poison. "Boil it for at least 10 minutes, I said, starting to gather wood for a proper fire. Chloe just laughed. "Old school," she said, pulling out an empty bottle. "I saw a video for this. It's way faster." She went through the motions, just like the guy in the video. She tore a piece of her shirt. She found some pebbles. She smashed up a piece of charcoal from last night's fire. She layered it all into the bottle. Everyone watched, mesmerized. It was like a magic trick. She poured the foul creek water in. And just like the video, it dripped out the other side looking clean, clear. She held it up to the light, a triumphant smile on her face. See? Unlimited water. Marcus, ever the optimist, clapped her on the shoulder. Others looked at me, my pile of firewood seeming suddenly inefficient, obsolete. The psychology of it is brilliant, isn't it? The appeal of a shortcut. Why spend an hour boiling and cooling water when a 15-second video gives you a solution in 5 minutes? The problem is that clear does not mean clean. The video, the hack, it removes sediment. It makes the water look potable. But it does absolutely nothing for the microscopic killers, the bacteria, the viruses, the giardia, the cryptosporidium, the things that will turn your insides into a liquid fire hose and dehydrate you faster than a day in the desert. I tried to explain this, I really did, but I was just one grizzled, pessimistic voice against the promise of 10 million views. Chloe drank first, a big theatrical gulp. "Tastes fine," she declared. 2 others, swayed by her confidence, followed suit. Sarah looked at me, then at her friend. She hesitated. That hesitation is the only reason she lived another 3 weeks. The sickness started on day 5. First, the cramps. Chloe brushed it off as something she ate. Then came the vomiting. Then the diarrhea. By day 6, all 3 of them were too weak to stand. We had no IVs, no antibiotics for secondary infections. I tried to explain this, I really did, but I was just one grizzled, pessimistic voice against the promise of 10 million views. Chloe drank first, a big theatrical gulp. "Tastes fine," she declared. 2 others, swayed by her confidence, followed suit. Sarah looked at me, then at her friend. She hesitated. That hesitation is the only reason she lived another 3 weeks. The sickness started on day 5. First, the cramps. Chloe brushed it off as something she ate. Then came the vomiting. Then the diarrhea. By day 6, all 3 of them were too weak to stand. We had no IVs, no antibiotics for secondary infections. We had nothing but boiled water, which they could no longer keep down. We watched them die, slowly, painfully, dehydrating in a world that was, ironically, soaking wet. I went back and looked at the filter Chloe had made. The charcoal pieces were too big. The cloth was a cheap synthetic that didn't trap anything. It was a toy, a prop from a video made by someone who had never been thirsty a day in their life. That's the first hidden danger of viral apocalypse hacks. They are filmed in a world without consequences. The guy with the beard went home and drank tap water. Chloe died in a puddle of her own filth, clutching an empty stomach. Before you trust a viral hack, ask yourself, was this filmed by someone who would bet their life on it? Because we did, and we lost. That day, I learned the first rule of this new world. The easy way will get you killed, every single time. And the internet, the great repository of human knowledge, had become the world's most effective poison pill. We had all the information in the world, and all it did was make us stupider, more vulnerable. I smashed her phone, the little screen spiderwebbing under the butt of my rifle. It felt like a righteous act, a small, pathetic rebellion against the digital ghosts that had just murdered our friends. It changed nothing. There were still 1,000 more hacks saved in everyone else's memory, just waiting for the chance to kill us. Day 54. It's cold. Colder than I thought it could get in here. Found a crate of old vinyl records in the back of this station. Using the sleeves for kindling. Listening to the silence between the pops and crackles of the fire reminds me of another fire. Another brilliant idea from the before times. We were holed up in a suburban development, maybe day 12. We'd cleared a block of houses, but the gas was out, and we were trying to conserve firewood. We needed to cook, to boil water without sending up a massive plume of smoke that would act as a dinner bell for every shambler and desperate scavenger for miles. That's when David brought it up. David was an accountant, a numbers guy, meticulous, detail-oriented, but with zero practical skills. His survival knowledge came entirely from curated playlists on YouTube. "I know how to make a penny can stove," he announced one evening, holding up 2 empty soda cans as if they were Excalibur. "They call it a hobo stove, super efficient, burns denatured alcohol, almost no smoke." It's another one you've probably seen, a classic of the "look what I can make from trash" genre of survival content. You cut the bottoms off 2 cans, nestle them together, add a wick of some kind, and fill it with fuel. The videos make it look incredible. A tiny, lightweight, powerful stove that can boil a cup of water in minutes. A prepper's dream. The problem, as with all these hacks, lies not in the concept, but in the execution and the context. In the video, the creator has a pristine workshop. He has a sharp utility knife, a ruler, sandpaper to smooth the edges, and a bottle of 99% pure alcohol fuel. David had a dull pocket knife, 2 flimsy aluminum cans, and a bottle of cheap vodka he'd looted from a liquor store. "It's alcohol, isn't it?" he argued when I questioned the fuel source. "It'll burn." He spent an hour meticulously and dangerously trying to cut the cans with his wobbly knife. The aluminum tore, leaving jagged, razor-sharp edges. He sliced his thumb open twice, dripping blood on the floor, a scent we couldn't afford to leave behind. But he was determined. He'd seen it done a dozen times. How hard could it be? He finally got the 2 pieces jammed together. It wasn't the neat, tight seal from the video, it was a mangled, lopsided thing. He stuffed a piece of cotton from a first aid kit inside for a wick, and then, the master stroke, poured in the vodka. He set it on the living room floor, a beautiful hardwood floor, I remember that, and struck a match. It flared up, a weak, sputtering blue flame. David beamed. "See, I told you." He placed a small pot of water on top. The stove, unable to bear even that minimal weight, buckled. The jagged seams split open, and a pool of flaming 40-proof vodka spread across the floor. Now, 40-proof vodka doesn't burn like gasoline. It's not an explosion. It's a creeping, insidious fire. It ignited the rug. It caught the edge of a dusty curtain. In seconds, what was a tiny, controlled flame became a house fire. Panic. Pure animal panic. We scrambled for the fire extinguisher from the kitchen, but it was empty. Of course it was. We started throwing pots of our precious, non-flaming water on it, which only seemed to spread the burning alcohol. The smoke was thick and black, and the noise, the shouting, the cracking of burning wood. It was the dinner bell I'd been worried about. We heard them first. That low, guttural moan, coming from all directions. The fire and the commotion had drawn them in. We had to abandon the house. We grabbed what we could and burst out the back door, straight into a nightmare. 3 of them were already in the backyard, drawn from the neighboring properties. David, the accountant, the YouTube expert, was the last one out. He hesitated in the doorway, maybe looking back at his failed creation. A shambler, its clothes still smoldering from walking through a patch of burning grass, grabbed him by the shirt. We didn't have time to help. We just ran. His screams followed us for 2 blocks. We lost a secure location, most of our food, and a member of our group because of a soda can. Why? Because the viral hack showed the what, but not the why, or the what if. It didn't explain that the precise construction is vital for structural integrity. It didn't explain that fuel purity is critical for a clean, efficient burn and that impurities create soot and smoke. It didn't explain that you should never, ever use a flammable device on an indoor, flammable surface without a fireproof base. The videos sell you the highlight reel. They don't show you the 50 failed attempts, the cuts, the burns, the near disasters that happen off camera. They present a finished, perfected product as an easily achievable reality. And in a world where a single mistake can be your last, that presentation isn't just misleading, it's malicious, it's murder. So if you're out there and you're thinking of making one of these, just use a damn campfire. A small, well-contained one. It's a skill that's kept our species alive for 100,000 years. I guarantee it's more reliable than something you saw on a 60-second clip, filmed by a guy who's probably getting paid by the soda company. Day 61. Found one today. On a wrist, attached to an arm, which was attached to what was left of a man wedged under a collapsed shelving unit in a warehouse. A paracord bracelet. One of those thick, woven survival bracelets. This one was black and orange. Probably had a tiny compass and a whistle buckle. The ultimate symbol of the armchair survivalist. The ultimate piece of useless crap. Let me be clear. Paracord itself is useful. Incredibly useful. It's strong, it's light. I have 100-foot length in my pack right now, and I use it for everything from shelter building to tripwires. But the bracelet? The bracelet is a marketing gimmick. It's a fashion accessory masquerading as a tool. And that makes it one of the most dangerous things you can carry. It preys on the psychology of preparedness. It gives you a false sense of security. You strap it to your wrist and think, I've got 15 feet of high-tensile cord ready to go. I'm prepared. But you're not. And this poor bastard under the shelves is proof. His legs were pinned. It looked like he'd climbed the shelves to get something and the whole unit had come down on him. He wasn't killed by the impact, not directly. His predicament was survivable. Unpleasant, but survivable. The problem was his pack, with all his real gear, was just out of reach, 10 feet away. I could see the strap. He couldn't get to his rope, his tools, his water. All he had was what was on his person. And on his wrist he had his survival bracelet. He'd clearly tried to use it. The bracelet was half unraveled, a tangled mess of knotted cord. And here's the first lie of the paracord bracelet: getting the cord. In the videos, a guy calmly pulls a tab and the whole thing unravels in seconds into a neat pile of rope. In reality, especially when you're injured, panicked, and your fingers are slick with blood, getting that weave undone is a maddening, impossible task. It's a tight, compressed braid. You need a tool just to get it started. This guy had clearly used his teeth or maybe a rock. He'd managed to free about 5 or 6 feet of it. A knotted, kinked, and frayed 5 or 6 feet. Now, what was his plan? What life-saving task was this little piece of string going to accomplish? The influencers tell you it can be used for shelter building, trapping, fishing line, first aid. The list is endless and absurd. Could he build a shelter? He was already in one. Could he trap a rabbit? He was the one who was trapped. First aid? The inner strands of paracord can supposedly be used as sutures. Can you imagine? Trying to stitch a gaping wound with a dirty piece of nylon pulled from a bracelet you've been wearing for months while pinned under a metal shelf? It's a fantasy. The most likely scenario is he was trying to use the cord to reach his pack. A classic problem. You need to extend your reach. He probably tried to fashion some kind of hook or lasso to snag the strap. But 6 feet of kinked cord wasn't enough. It was just enough to give him hope. Just enough to make him waste precious energy and time on a futile task. The second lie of the paracord bracelet: the length. They advertise up to 15 feet. That sounds like a lot. It's not. Unfurl 15 feet of rope in a room. See how little it is. It's not enough to rappel down a ledge. It's not enough to rig a proper ridgeline for a tarp. It's barely enough to tie up a single decent bundle of firewood. What it is enough for is to get you into trouble. It's just enough rope to make you think you can do something and then fail halfway through. A real survivalist carries 100 feet, 1,000. They carry it in a quick deployment bundle, not in a piece of jewelry that takes 20 minutes to unravel. This guy under the shelf? He starved to death. Or died of dehydration, slowly. Just 10 feet from everything he needed. His hand was still outstretched towards his pack.
and on his other wrist, the useless, half-unraveled symbol of his false confidence. He put his faith in a gadget. He outsourced his skill to a product. The vendors and the influencers who push these things, they're selling an idea that you can buy preparedness, that you don't need to learn the skills, you just need to own the gear. Buy this bracelet, this tactical pen, this credit card multi-tool, and you are a survivor. It's a lie, a deadly lie. Gear doesn't save you. Skills save you. Knowledge saves you. And the knowledge that a paracord bracelet is a piece of crap could have saved this man's life. If he just had a simple 20-foot length of cord in his pocket, coiled up and ready to go, he could have snagged his bag. He could have survived. Instead, he died with a fashion accessory tangled around his wrist. I took his pack. Can't let it go to waste. But I left the bracelet. Let it be a warning, a monument to the dangers of easy survival myths. Day 73. A storm is rolling in, the kind that makes the sky turn a bruised purple and the wind howl like a banshee. The antenna on top of this radio station is groaning. Every time the wind gusts, I think about Maria and her perfect A-frame tarp shelter. It was another YouTube classic, 5 awesome bushcraft shelters you can build in minutes. The thumbnail is always the same. A handsome, flannel-clad man sitting cozily under a taut, perfectly angled tarp, sipping coffee from a tin mug while a gentle rain falls around him. It looks idyllic. It looks simple. Maria was obsessed with that simplicity. She was a minimalist. Before the fall, she lived in one of those tiny homes and preached the gospel of decluttering. Her approach to survival was the same. She eschewed what she called heavy, unnecessary gear. All she carried was a small pack with a knife, a fire steel, and a single high-end seal nylon tarp. "This is all I need," she'd say, holding it up. "The woods will provide the rest." Her favorite design was the A-frame, a single ridgeline strung between 2 trees with the tarp draped over it and staked to the ground. It's a fundamental design, and in fair weather, it works. The problem is, the videos are always filmed in fair weather. The rain is usually a guy with a garden hose just off camera. The wind is a gentle summer breeze. They don't film it in a real storm. They don't film it when the temperature drops below freezing and the wind is trying to rip the world apart. We were on the move, crossing the Blue Ridge, and we got caught out by a sudden storm, a real one. The temperature plummeted. Rain started coming down in sheets, driven sideways by 40-mile-an-hour winds. We needed to get under cover fast. I found a rock outcropping, a shallow cave that would at least keep us out of the wind and the worst of the rain. It was cramped and damp, but it was solid. Maria scoffed. "A caveman's shelter," she said. "I can do better." She found 2 trees perfectly spaced, and with a speed born of practice, she set up her A-frame. She was meticulous. She used taut-line hitches, just like the videos taught her. Her ridgeline was drum-tight. Her stakes were perfectly angled. When she was done, it looked exactly like the pictures. A tiny, defiant triangle of order in the raging chaos of the storm.
She crawled inside, smug and dry. The rest of us huddled under the rock, shivering, watching her. For the first hour, it seemed like she'd been right. Her shelter held. The wind howled, but her expensive tarp and expert knots were doing their job. But a storm isn't a single, constant force. It's a living, breathing beast. The wind gusts, it changes direction. The rain finds weaknesses you never knew existed. First, the ground saturated. The perfectly angled stakes, driven into what was once firm soil, started to pull loose from the mud. The tarp began to flap. A small, rhythmic tap at first, then a loud, violent crackle like a bullwhip. Then the wind found the gap. It got under the edge of the tarp and lifted. The effect was instantaneous. It was like an inside-out umbrella. 2 stakes ripped free. The ridgeline, now bearing the full, shocking force of the wind against a giant nylon sail, sagged violently. One of her perfect knots, now under a load it was never designed for, slipped. The whole structure collapsed. In the space of a single heartbeat, Maria's idyllic shelter went from a taut,
perfect A-frame to a tangled, flapping shroud wrapped around her, held down by the weight of the wind and the driving rain. She was trapped. We heard her screaming, but we couldn't hear the words over the wind. We saw the thrashing form on the ground. We tried to get to her. I crawled out from under the rock, the wind so strong I could barely stand. The rain was like needles. By the time I reached her, she was no longer moving. The sil nylon, the miracle material that was supposed to save her, had become her coffin. When we finally got the tarp off her, unwrapping her from the wet, clinging folds, we found the cause. In the collapse, one of the tent stakes she had whittled from a branch, another bushcraft tip, had been flung around and pierced the tarp, and then her neck. A freak accident. A 1 in a million chance. But in this world, 1 in a million chances happen every single day. The second, more direct cause was hypothermia. Trapped in the wet, cold fabric with the wind sucking the heat from her body, she hadn't lasted 10 minutes. The videos don't tell you about that. They don't tell you that a tarp shelter has 0 insulation. They don't tell you that in a real storm, the ground will turn to mush and your stakes will fail. They don't tell you that a simple, minimalist shelter is just a simple, minimalist way to die. They sell a fantasy, the fantasy of the lone wolf, the master of the woods, who can bend nature to their will with a single tool. It's a lie. Survival is not about minimalism. It's about redundancy. It's about having a backup plan and a backup for the backup. It's about respecting the hell out of the storm and knowing that a shallow, ugly cave is infinitely better than a beautiful, fragile tent. I took her tarp. It's a good tarp, but I'll never sleep under it in a storm. I use it as a ground cloth. Inside a building, behind stone walls. Maria learned the hard way that the hidden dangers of online survival advice aren't just about getting the technique wrong. Sometimes the technique itself is a trap, a beautiful, elegant, and perfectly fatal design flaw in your plan to stay alive. Day 89. Silence. That's the sound of running out of fuel for the generator. The hum is gone, replaced by the sound of my own breathing and the distant, constant moaning from the valley below. I need a fire, not for warmth, not tonight, to heat up the last of my canned stew. And it makes me think about the most pervasive, the most mind-blowing fire-starting hack of them all. The gum wrapper and the battery. Oh, you know this one. It's the king of viral survival hacks. The video is always the same. Someone takes a foil gum wrapper, cuts it into an hourglass shape, and touches the ends to a AA battery. There's a puff of smoke, a tiny flame, and poof, fire. It looks like magic. It looks like a superpower. It's presented as the ultimate backup, the one trick that will save you when your lighter is empty and your matches are wet. It is, without a doubt, the single most overrated and dangerously misleading survival skill ever conceived. Let me tell you about Alex. He was a tech guy, a gadget freak. He had a bag full of solar chargers, hand-crank radios, and GPS devices. He loved the idea of using technology to beat the apocalypse. He was also a firm believer in the gum wrapper trick. It's just science, he'd say. Short-circuiting the battery. Simple. He practiced it. I'll give him that. He'd sit around camp carefully cutting his foil wrappers and creating tiny, momentary flames. He was proud of it. He saw it as a sign of his superior, cleverer approach to survival. My approach was, and is, a ferro rod and a Zippo lighter with extra flints and fluid. Redundant, reliable, and boring. So analog, he'd call it. We were scavenging a strip mall. It was cold, and we'd been caught outside as dusk fell. We needed a fire, quickly, to get some warmth and light before we tried to find a secure place for the night. My Zippo was dry. My mistake. I hadn't checked it that morning. My ferro rod was in my main pack, which we'd stashed a block away for a quick getaway. Alex's moment had come. His eyes lit up. I got this. He pulled out a fresh AA battery from one of his gadgets and a stick of gum. He carefully unwrapped the foil, tore it, and folded it into the requisite shape.
He had a small pile of the driest tinder we could find, shredded paper receipts from a ruined checkout counter. He brought the ends of the wrapper to the battery terminals. A wisp of smoke. A tiny, brief orange glow at the center of the foil. And then, nothing. The foil burned through. The connection was broken. "Whoops," he said, grinning. "Let's try again." He tried again. Same result. A little fizzle of hope, then darkness. The problem with this hack is that it relies on a perfect storm of ideal conditions that do not exist in the real world. First, you need a fresh, powerful battery. The half-dead one rolling around in your flashlight won't cut it. Second, you need a specific type of wrapper, foil with a paper backing. The modern plastic or wax paper ones won't work. Third, the shape of your foil strip has to be perfect. Thin enough in the middle to concentrate the heat, but not so thin that it burns through instantly. Fourth, and this is the killer, the flame it produces is minuscule. It lasts for less than a second. It's not a flame you can bring to tinder. You have to bring the tinder to the flame. Your tinder has to be impossibly, microscopically bone dry and fine. We're talking magnesium shavings or cotton ball fluff. The shredded paper receipts Alex had were good tinder for a lighter. For this, they might as well have been wet logs. He tried 5 times, 5 wrappers, 5 little fizzles of failure. All the while, the temperature was dropping. The sun was gone. Every shadow started to look like a shambler. Frustration turned to panic. His hands started shaking. He dropped the battery. "This always works in the videos," he muttered, his voice trembling. "They must be using special batteries." They're not using special batteries. They are using special tinder. They are filming in a warm, dry room. They are doing it 100 times until they get the one perfect take. The real talk on easy survival myths is that they are performance art, not practical skills. They are designed to get views, not to save lives. While Alex was fumbling with his space-age technique, I was doing something analog. I walked back to our pack. It was a risk, but a calculated one. I retrieved my ferro rod and a cotton ball soaked in petroleum jelly, my emergency tinder. I was back in 3 minutes. Alex was still there, on his knees, trying to get a spark from a new combination of wrapper and battery. One strike from my ferro rod, and the cotton ball erupted into a steady, reliable flame. We had a fire in 10 seconds. Alex just stared at it, then at the useless scraps of foil in his hand. He looked defeated. He learned a lesson that night. A boring, reliable method that works 99% of the time is infinitely better than a flashy, clever trick that works 1% of the time under lab conditions. He was killed 2 weeks later, not by a fire-starting failure, but by an infected cut. But I always think of him when I see my fire still. The world is not a YouTube video. There are no do-overs, there are no secret tricks. There is only what works and what doesn't. And a gum wrapper and a battery as a survival tool does not work. It's a neat science experiment, a fun party trick. But when your life is on the line, when the cold is biting and the dark is closing in, it's a dangerous fantasy. It's a lie that will get you killed. Day 102. I spent most of the day sorting through old broadcast tapes here at the station. News reports from the first week, the official statements, the government reassurances. The situation is under control. We have established quarantine zones. Help is on the way. It's almost funny listening to it now. It's the same tone, the same confident, soothing voice as those damn survival hack videos. It's all rooted in the same fundamental human need, the desperate desire for an easy solution, for a magic bullet. This is the core of it all. This is the real why behind the failures. It's not just about faulty techniques or misleading videos. It's about the psychology of survival misinformation. It's about false hope and how it's a more dangerous killer than any zombie or any storm. Think about our world, the one before. We had an app for everything, a pill for every ailment, a 3-step guide to solve any complex life problem.
We were conditioned to believe that every challenge had a simple, quick, and accessible solution, and a whole industry sprang up to feed that belief. The survival niche was just a symptom of the larger disease. These influencers, these content creators, they weren't selling skills, they were selling dopamine. They were selling the feeling of being prepared without the hard, boring, repetitive work of actually getting prepared. Buying a paracord bracelet feels like an action. Watching a 30-second video on how to filter water feels like learning. It provides a satisfying, bite-sized hit of accomplishment. It's a simulation of competence. And in a world that was growing increasingly chaotic and uncertain even before the dead started walking, that simulation was a powerful drug. I saw it in my group every day. I saw how they clung to these ideas. Chloe, with her water bottle filter, wasn't just filtering water. She was proving she was smart. She was proving she had a special knowledge that made her valuable, that made her safe. David, with his soda can stove, wasn't just trying to boil water.
He was trying to impose order on a chaotic situation. He was recreating a controlled experiment from a world that made sense, in a world that had fallen apart. It was a form of denial, a refusal to accept the new rules. The new rule is that there are no shortcuts. The new rule is that every calorie of energy you gain costs you 1,000 calories to acquire. The new rule is that nature and the undead are brutally, unforgivingly efficient at exploiting an organism's weaknesses. And our greatest weakness was our belief that we were smarter than the rules. The hidden danger of these viral hacks wasn't just that they failed. It was that they gave people the confidence to take risks they otherwise never would have taken. Maria would never have slept out in that storm without her invincible tarp shelter. She would have huddled in the cave with the rest of us. Alex would never have let my lighter run dry if he didn't have his foolproof battery trick as a mental safety net. They took risks based on a faulty foundation. They built their survival plans on digital sand. And when the tide came in, it all washed away. This is why de-influencing these viral apocalypse hacks is so important, even now, at the end of everything. Because the poison is still out there. If humanity ever gets a chance to rebuild, this weakness will still be in our code. People will still look for the easy way. People will still trust a confident amateur over a cautious expert. They will still trade a lifetime of learned wisdom for a moment of cleverness. The real talk is this: survival is not clever. It's not sexy. It's not a montage of brilliant hacks. It's a long, slow, grinding process. It's carrying the extra weight. It's boiling the water for 10 minutes every single time, even when you're dying of thirst. It's doing the boring, repetitive, difficult thing until it becomes muscle memory. It's about building a foundation of real, time-tested skills, not a collection of flimsy tricks. The influencers sold a dream. The reality is a nightmare of infected wounds, hypothermia, and slow starvation. They promised a key to survival. What they delivered was a key to a locked coffin. I've been thinking about the man who made the water filter video, the one with the beard. Does he know how many people he killed, or does he not care? Maybe he was just chasing likes, chasing ad revenue. A digital mercenary who never had to look his victims in the eye. In a way, he's no different from the shamblers, mindless, acting on a simple, overriding impulse. Theirs is to consume flesh. His was to consume attention. The results, for Chloe, were exactly the same. So if, by some miracle, you are listening to this, and you are at the beginning of your own long, dark night, turn off the phone. Put away the videos. The answers are not there. They are in the old books. They are in the calluses on your hands. They are in the quiet, patient, and brutally honest feedback of the real world. The real world doesn't care about your clever hacks. Day 115. The air in the lower levels of this building is thick, stale, smells of decay and dust.
It's probably harmless, but it makes me think of Mark and his absolute terror of bad air. Mark was a hypochondriac even before the world ended. A mild-mannered chemistry teacher who was convinced every sneeze was a harbinger of plague. When the dead started walking, his anxieties found a new and terrifying focus: airborne pathogens. He was obsessed with the idea that the virus, the rage, whatever it was, could be airborne. The official reports said otherwise, transmission by bite or fluid exchange. But Mark didn't trust the official reports. He trusted the alternative sources, the conspiracy forums, the channels that preached a gospel of hidden truths. And one of those truths was that you could build your own military-grade gas mask from a 2-liter soda bottle, some charcoal, and a whole lot of duct tape. It's another hack that's been around for years, a staple of the post-apocalyptic DIY scene. The videos show, in hyperlapsed glory, the transformation of household trash into what looks like a piece of high-tech survival gear. You cut the bottle to fit your face, stuff the nozzle with cotton and activated charcoal from aquarium filters, and then seal the whole thing to your head with tape. The promise is alluring: total protection from airborne threats for just a few dollars. Mark made one for everyone in our group. He spent 2 days meticulously constructing them, laying them out in a row like trophies. They looked ridiculous, like the props from a low-budget sci-fi movie. But Mark was a chemistry teacher. He used words like adsorption and particulate filtration. He sounded like he knew what he was talking about. He had a binder full of printouts and diagrams. He was so sure, so confident. Most of us just nodded along and stored the contraptions in our packs, considering them a harmless eccentricity. We never thought we'd actually have to use them. Then came the fire at the chemical plant. We were passing through an industrial area on the outskirts of Atlanta when we saw the smoke. A thick, acrid, yellow-green plume rising into the sky. We didn't know what was burning, but we knew it was bad. The wind was carrying it right towards us. "Put on the masks," Mark screamed, his voice already strained with panic. He was fumbling with his own, pulling the plastic bottle over his head and frantically trying to seal the edges with a roll of tape. This is where the fantasy of the DIY hack collides with messy, terrified reality. In the video, the user is calm, the tape is applied smoothly, the seal is perfect. In a real-life crisis, your hands are shaking, you're sweating, which means the tape doesn't stick properly to your skin. The plastic bottle, which isn't molded to the unique contours of a human face, has gaps. I knew it was a bad idea. My gut screamed at me that trapping my own breath in a plastic bag was more dangerous than whatever was in the smoke. I opted for a simpler, older method: a bandana soaked in water tied over my nose and mouth. Not perfect, but it would filter the worst of the particulates without suffocating me. I urged the others to do the same, but Mark was insistent. "This is a chemical agent. The bandana will do nothing. My filters will save us." His panic was contagious. 2 others, a young couple named Ben and Eva, listened to him. They struggled into their own bottle masks. I could see their faces, pale and wide-eyed, distorted by the curved plastic. We ran. We tried to get upwind of the smoke. The air was burning. It tasted of acid and metal. My eyes were watering, my lungs on fire. But I could breathe. Through the haze, I saw Mark stumble. He was clawing at his face, at the layers of duct tape around his neck. Ben and Eva were right behind him, also staggering, their movements clumsy and uncoordinated. They weren't suffering from the smoke. They were suffocating. The DIY filter was a complete failure. The activated charcoal from the aquarium store wasn't the right grade for airborne chemicals. The cotton balls became saturated with his own moist breath in seconds, blocking the airflow. The elegant design from the internet had one massive critical flaw. It provided nowhere for the carbon dioxide you exhale to go. He wasn't breathing filtered air. He was breathing his own recycled CO2. He was dying from hypercapnia. The smoke was a threat, yes, but his solution to the threat was a guaranteed killer. I saw Ben rip his mask off, gasping, his face blue. He took one huge lungful of the toxic air and collapsed, convulsing. Eva, seeing him fall, panicked and ran right into a cloud of the thickest smoke. I never saw her again. Mark was on the ground, his legs kicking feebly. He was too tangled in tape to get the bottle off his head. It was a self-imposed execution. By the time I got to him, it was too late. He'd suffocated in his own personal DIY safety device. I checked his filter later. The charcoal was barely dusted. It hadn't done a thing. He had died for a theory. He had died because he trusted a diagram on the internet more than his own body's desperate need for oxygen.
This is the ultimate hidden danger. The hack that is designed to protect you from a threat becomes a more immediate and deadly threat itself. It's the fire extinguisher that explodes. It's the seatbelt that strangles you. It's the logical, science-based sounding solution that is actually based on a complete misunderstanding of science. Real gas masks have separate canisters for intake and exhaust. They have one-way valves. They are the product of 100 years of research and development, tested in the most horrific conditions imaginable. And people on the internet think they can replicate one with a soda bottle and some fish tank supplies. It's the height of arrogance. And the price for that arrogance, for Mark, was his life. Don't trust the DIY safety gear. Don't bet your life on a clever design you can't personally test and verify under controlled conditions. Sometimes the low-tech, good-enough solution, the wet bandana, is the one that lets you live to fight another day.